Hello, everyone. Welcome to our class tonight. Sorry that I'm not there with you. Well, I'm not really sorry that I'm not there with you because I'm in Spain, and so that's kind of beautiful. And but I am sorry that I can't be here to teach this live. I do enjoy our conversations and thinking about this, and I think this is really a very cool topic to talk about and something that's really relevant and important for us to kind of know and understand. It's a little bit different than maybe what you've seen in the past. So we'll talk about this lecture, and hopefully this will help you as you start to think about some of the other ways you're going to collect some data and the rest. So we're going to talk about needs assessment, but we're going to take it in a continuous improvement model as opposed to the kind of traditional old school one. I've read many needs assessments. I've seen a lot of people do them and do it in different ways. And they're necessary and it's important, but they can be you can miss a lot. So we'll show you what I've kind of done here is I have all of these concepts. There's like five or six of them that I take. I display it in kind of a traditional way that you'll see. All of them are kind of looking at it through an educational lens. And then we look at it if we do it the traditional way or if we do it in a continuous improvement way. And so we're going to talk about that and make sure you have a good understanding of that. So this is the first time you've ever kind of heard about improvement science or continuous improvement. This is a good place to start to think about it. Okay, so we'll go from there. And let me see if I can. All right. So a traditional needs assessment. I love this kind of picture with a that you have. It's kind of your old cabinet where you got some written work in it and the rest. It's very, very typical. Needs assessment is done typically before you go out and actually do some type of intervention or program. It's usually taking a look to identify a gap. There's Gupta talks about this idea of needs assessments where they say, it looks at where you are and where you want to be, that the space between where you are and where you want to be is the need. And so we are assessing that space between. We're looking to see what are those needs. If I'm trying to get from here to here, what are the needs that I need that actually have to happen, take place, be implemented, something along those lines to get me to those places. The traditional old school needs assessment that we've seen for years looks like this, and you'll see when we start looking at the examples you've probably participated in, maybe you've even planned or implemented one that looks a little bit like the traditional way. Often it's one-time data collection. We're going to go out and collect some data. You look at the specific gaps or deficits. So if you're maybe looking at test score data, you're seeing where are kids falling short. It's usually very external, meaning that I am the evaluator, the assessor, the administrator, somebody who's going to actually, in charge of this needs assessment. I'm going to collect the data, I'm going to do the analysis, and I'm going to say this is where the needs are, and then you're going to go forth and do. Usually you'll see quite a bit of data collected, and we call this a little bit of analysis paralysis. We do so much to be able to get this huge amount of stuff to be able to try to move forward. It can be difficult to do. And then the most important part is that it's disconnected from the implementation, meaning I do this needs assessment, I write a report, I put it together and say, go forth and do this, and then I move on. So that's normally what we see. And I know that sounds a little kooky, but that's very traditional and very typical of a needs assessment that we'll see in schools, particularly, but also in businesses, in nonprofits, in a lot of organizations that do this when they put together needs assessments. So let's talk for a minute about improvement science or continuous improvement that we talk about. Now, this is quick, and I am, if you were to ask if I was an expert, I would say I'm probably a B minus in that level. And I know quite a bit about it, but I am not an expert. I work with experts who are fantastic in this area of improvement science, and they do miraculous things with our schools and districts and thinking of things in a new way. And so I think that's why I've chosen to do this as opposed to sticking to the old traditional way. I'm starting to see such a great value in improvement science and that work as we do it and model it in new parts of what we've been doing. And so this is something you'll be able to take and use it in your own work that you're doing. So it really is looking at getting towards change, and it's disciplined. They use a lot of this improvement science work happens in hospitals. They're focusing on small things. It's a little harder in education, but I'll show you some examples of ways to be able to do it. The thing they use is this thing called the Plan, Do, Study, Act, the PDSA cycle, which is there on the right. We're not going to go in depth into that. We just don't have time to be able to do that here today. But look into it, read about it, plan. You're going to define the change. Do, you're going to carry out some type of change, usually pretty small. You're going to analyze the data from that change that you've done, and then you're going to decide what you're going to do next. And then you go again. It's iterative. Do it again. Sorry for the yawn. Then you do it again. And so it's this cyclical process. It's not at the beginning. It will be at the beginning, but it's not, it doesn't live at the beginning. It goes continuously throughout my implementation to be able to continuously give me feedback, data, information to change, iterate, and make things better as we move along. Okay, so that's this improvement science that you do. You're going to really look at small tests, values, these small things that we're going to test small areas to kind of iterate towards where we want to get to. We really like to be able to see, they emphasize learning from variation. Variation means if you expect it to do this and some things change, it's variance or variable. What is different about that? And I'm going to learn from it. And the other thing that's most important is this idea around systems, which we don't have time to get into that. That's like it's class, it's a whole degree. But systems really is not just looking at one person, but you're looking at the system under which they actually function. Every system is perfectly designed to get the results that we get. Edward Deming said that. And what he's talking about is this idea that whatever results we get come from a system that has been designed to produce those results, whatever they are. If they're bad results, you may have a system that's designed to produce bad results. So address the system, fix the system, and you'll have better results. So improvement science really is about addressing some of the systems under which we collect some data and do some of the work. So you'll see some examples if we talk through. So there's really 5 things that we're going to move from a traditional approach to this kind of more of a continuous improvement approach or improvement science. And the first one is the one that makes the most sense, and it's this idea of going from a static to an iterative model. And I defined iterative for you. It means that you're going through and it's a continual process of improvement that you go around and around and around again. It's not just one time. Static is just once and you're done. With this iterative thing, it's continuous. You change, you may evolve. I love the idea of evolving. Evolving means it really kind of speaks to the idea that I collect some data, do some things, and then I may change how I approach, And each time I iterate, each time I go through and collect some data and do some analysis on it, I begin to change and kind of see what I'm getting to from there. So it's iterative. We really do update the needs assessment as we go along. So here's an example. Here's the first one that you can see. So you go through as a district and you review last year's standardized reading scores and find 40% of 6th grade students are below grade level. I'm sure that you've been in a school, if you're a teacher or in a district, that you've seen this type of stuff. So here's how the district traditionally responds. The leadership conducts a one-time survey of teachers. District implements a new intervention based upon vendor recommendations from the feedback from the teacher. They schedule after-school tutoring for all students below benchmark. They evaluate the effectiveness. Evaluation of effectiveness is planned for the end of the year. I probably can point to 25 schools that I know right now are doing exactly this. It's not bad. It's just missing some opportunities. We're not really looking at why the students are struggling. All we're doing is just collecting teacher feedback on saying, where are the issues? We assume that the intervention is the correct fit for all students. It may be, but most likely it's not because every student's different. We don't make adjustments during it. We're not looking at it as we go along. We expect to get to one place, and when we get to the end, we just evaluate, did we get there? That's the question we ask, as opposed to this formative process. There's really no input from students or the teachers who are actually teaching it. So that's a very traditional needs assessment. That's normal. That's what we do most often, just so you know. Let's take a look at it if we did it from an improvement science lens. Same problem, 40% reading below grade level. So the first thing we do, and we go into our PDSA cycle, this plan part, this team still starts the reading score with reading score data, but now they also conduct empathy interviews. Empathy interviews are just short interviews that you have with students, possibly with teachers to be able to really better understand the context under which these students are actually learning. You may sit down and do a quick interview with them, understand maybe what their home life is like. What are some of the challenges they have? They don't like to put things back and forth. I don't know what's happening actually to be able to prevent me from getting to reading more. All this kind of work. You may walk through the classroom to take a look again at the context under which learning is happening. And then you may do a root cause analysis, which is beyond the scope of here, but a root cause analysis is really not looking at this kind of symptom, which we'll talk about later, but what is really the cause? What's really happening along those lines? And so when they've done this analysis, they find a lot of the struggling students, they just don't read at home. So a place that you may need is to address that reading at home. And teachers, they really don't know how to do the tier 2 stuff with these struggling readers. They don't know what to do. We have it, but they just don't know what they're doing. So that was our plan. Now we're going to do. So we're going to do a quick test in 2 classrooms where teachers try short daily just right reading blocks. So we're going to help you with this tier 2 approach. We're going to start with these real quick things to be able to see what actually happens. They collect data weekly with exit tickets. Exit tickets are a thing as people are leaving. You do a quick kind of jot down of what they got going on, and you analyze those data to see how it's like what's happening. After 3 weeks, the team sees improved engagement, so that's one area, and anecdotal growth and fluency. Anecdotal means that you may not have a huge test that you're going to take at the end of the year, but anecdotal means that it might be one small, a little bit of information. It's kind of how you're seeing it as you're listening to them, as you're watching some of these happen, because you only done 3 weeks. They note students are more confident, but they need better book access. That's something else they've seen. So then they act. The team iterates by providing, so they change a little bit, providing classroom libraries and expanding the strategy to 4 more classrooms. They refine the support model and begin the coaching cycles. So now you can see they're doing things as you go along. It's not just something they here, go to this intervention after school and we'll check to see how it impacted after. No, this is 3 weeks into the intervention, and now we're starting to look and we're going to add a little more, change a little more, add a little bit of this. That's this area that we're looking at. So a big difference is that a standard approach is going to be one-time surveys and scores. With the iterative kind of assessment that we're doing, we're going to continually collect data, quantitative and qualitative. As you do top-down program adoption, you're going to do this as opposed to let's talk to the teachers who are actually working with the students. What should we be doing? It's not one size fits all. It's really tailored. It's working with the students I'm actually working with. That's what those empathy interviews will do. You collect some information from them. Therefore, you know what's going to work best with them. The static assessments at the end of the year, this one's real-time learning and adaptation. So this is one example, static versus this continuous improvement approach. Let's look at a different shift. Instead of looking at trying to fix symptoms, we fix systems. So a classic example of this, if we look in the medical field, is why do you generally take Advil? You take Advil because something hurts. That Advil does not fix what is the problem. If you're a runner and you come home from runs, and every time you come home from runs, your hip hurts, you take Advil, it masks the pain, but it doesn't fix what's wrong. Could be your gait, could be your shoes, could be that you've got hip issues that you have to go fix at the doctor's office. There's a variety of things. Those are the systems under which you run. The symptoms, the pain. When I take Advil, I just address the symptoms. Happens the same in schools, okay? So usually what you say is you've got low test scores, you're focusing on that. Well, there could be a lot more going on there, okay? So we're going to look at root causes, and we'll take a look at some of these ideas. All right. Well, here's our scenario for us to get through. Symptoms-based needs assessment, typical, which is traditional. The school notices that 25% of students are chronically absent, missing more than 10% of school days. Very typical thing right now. Again, happening all over the place. This is not, I didn't pull this one out. I mean, this is happening everywhere. So the school sends out automatic calls to parents, adds posters around campus promoting attendance, holds an assembly on the importance of showing up. Now, are any of those bad things? No, they're not bad things. But are they really what the issue is? We make an assumption. Students and families are simply unaware of that attendance matters. Holy cow, you mean my kid has to come to school every day? I had no idea. That's what it's saying there. Just because I tell you to do something doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to change the way you behave. Behavior is a funny thing. because I message it to you doesn't mean that I'm going to actually do it. Again, we're addressing the symptom, which is absenteeism. We're not looking at why the students are missing school. We're not addressing the why. All we're saying is come to this and go. So we're going to go through and do it in a much more kind of an improvement science approach. We're going to look at the attendance data. I'm not saying we're not looking at attendance data, but we're also going to do some systems mapping. Systems mapping, we're going to look across the system to see where there are some issues maybe with kind of reaching out or parent kind of notification, or even taking a look out there and saying, where are some gaps in the actual community? You can do some stuff where you build some maps to say there's certain areas that miss more or not. You're going to do empathy interviews. You're going to talk to kids again. It's novel. We're going to do this all the time. And then you actually, when you talk to families, let's sit down, let's go. You don't have to go with all of them, but let's go out and talk to 10 of them. 10 of our kids that are most chronically absent, go talk to their parents. Hey, what's going on? Is there an issue? Do they not understand they have to be here? What's preventing them to come to school every day? We actually found, based upon this, many students lack reliable transportation. They can't get there. Some are caregivers of younger kids. This is very normal in many of our rural districts. Several feel disconnected from the school culture and unsafe on campus. They don't want to come because they may feel like they're getting beat up, or they don't have friends, or they don't feel like they belong there. Why am I going to be motivated to go if that's how I feel? So now we have a little more data that's relevant to what you're doing. So what you do is the school tests a check and connect mentor program in one grade level. So they just pick one grade and say, we want you to have somebody who does a check and connect with these kids to make sure they're feeling connected. They also partner with local transit agency to test a bus pass pilot for a small group. Let's get 20 of these kids and give them bus passes and see what happens. See if they start coming. So what they found is that attendance improves by 12% for the students of the pilot group. Those who actually went through that small group, they had an increase. Students report greater connection to school and feel fewer logistical barriers. So they did these two small things, kind of focused in one grade, just a few students. Our attendance is actually going up for those kids, and kids feel more connected. So we're going to scale this up to a much larger mentor program, and we're going to expand the transportation when we see that a little bit works. That's improvement science. Do a little bit, build it from there. Attendance committee is restructured to focus on barrier identification, not on compliance. Not that compliance is bad. That's my business. That's the side of the house I live on, but there can be so much more than that. So here's some key differences that you can look at. Here's the systems approach that they actually took. I mean, the symptom-focused approach they took, as opposed to a systems-focused approach. Did a root cause analysis. We uncovered logistical, social, and emotional behaviors, differentiated the supports based upon what the students really needed, and they kind of got this process. They want to understand why they're not here. It's not simply get them here. Let's understand the why. Let's get behind this, okay? This is a good idea. Shift 3, user-centered and localized. So user-centered really usually says, let's take a look and make sure that the users are contributing to this. Usually what we're looking at are teachers, students, parents, families, those who actually are involved in this kind of work, okay? And it also values, this is a really important sentence. When we're dealing with user-centered focus, when we're looking at those who are actually using the programs and the rest, it really does value the local context. It really does value the lived experience of those who are participating in it. What that means is that it values they know that you are, as a parent, trying to get them there, but I am working, I got 2 jobs, I got to be somewhere else, I worked all night, I came in, I'm tired, I couldn't get him to school, my car's not working, all these things, okay? So it values them. So here's an example. The district counseling department conducts a once-a-year climate survey and notes that students report moderate levels of stress and anxiety. So we do this climate survey and we find these results. Okay. So the district office develops a one-size-fits-all wellness curriculum. Again, this happens all over the place. This is like the norm. This is what we do. All counselors are required to implement monthly wellness lessons and advisory classes, and lessons are standardized across all sites with no modification allowed, because everybody's got to get the same thing. Make sure you're doing it all right. Make sure you're following the implementation plan with fidelity. Maybe doesn't really reflect local students' voices or the differences in school context. I'm sure many of you work in districts where one school is very different than the other, even though, they're both elementary schools or high schools. They may be very different because they're in different neighborhoods, they have different populations, different SES. It's different. It doesn't allow the counselors to have some feedback. They're experts in what they're doing. That's why they went to school and did what they did. So when you do this, you have to think, how can I make sure that I provide them with some opportunity to give me insight and to help me make this better? And it actually may not address the issues because they have some problems. So let's look at as we go along. Here's a better way to do this that you've got here. So our plan counselors at one middle school use short anonymous digital check-ins, 2 or 3 questions weekly. 2 or 3 questions, all the kids give really quick, and then I can kind of see what's the trending areas, what are some of the concerns. They also hold small student focus groups to hear directly from different grade levels and affinity groups. So we're going to do focus groups. We'll talk about those later on. Focus groups are a great data collection tool that we use. So we collect some of these plan, and then what do we learn? Students aren't stressed by academics as much by peer conflicts, social media pressure, and the lack of safe adults to talk to. They feel wellness lessons are disconnected and scripted, which usually they are. So it doesn't really pertain to them because it's really disconnected from what they're doing. So what they do is they go out and the counselor tests a drop-in lunch and listen space twice a week. If it doesn't work, it's no skin on your nose, go do something else. But it's just twice a week. Let's see how that does. Go for a couple weeks to see what goes on. Another test, adding a short peer-led reflection at the end of a weekly homerooms. So these guys go in and they lead a little bit of a peer reflection, kind of short reflection on the week and the rest. And the peers do it, the other students as opposed to the teacher. What they find, what happens, attendance and lunch and learn grow, or lunch and listen grows each week. Students say they feel more heard and report feelings less isolated. The peer-led checkouts help teachers flag students needing support earlier. So what do? The school scales up the model and allows each counselor to adapt on the basic the campus needs based upon the students they have there. They co-develop future lessons with students, increasing relevance and engagement. What we're seeing is this is a kind of this idea of improvement science where you iterate towards things, you improvement, make it a little bit better. Here's key differences. I don't need to read these to you. You can look at them and you can see the slides that you have in there. You'd think it was 9 o'clock on a Saturday night. Oh, it is. That's right. Okay. Just enough data. So sometimes when traditional needs assessments, they take so much data and it takes so much time, you never get through everything to be able to get on to the actual assessment to make some changes and do something, okay? Paralysis by analysis, we call it analysis paralysis as well. So school wants to improve math outcome grade in grades 3 through 5. Our 3 through 5 math is not great. Let's do it better. It's pretty much across the county, pretty much across the state. We should be doing that. So they go through and they analyze 3 years of state summative assessment data. They review benchmark scores, student group comparisons, item level analysis. They do classroom observations using a 40-item rubric, which is not uncommon, not uncommon. Distribute a lengthy teacher survey about math instruction and curriculum. It takes forever. I mean, when you start doing this, it takes forever to analyze all these things, and they delay the intervention actually happening because they're so busy analyzing and thinking about the data. The teachers get burned out on it. They just got to move on and just start teaching. Survey fatigue is a real thing. Complexity of the data makes it hard to prioritize or act. You get so much data that you end up not knowing where should I go here, should I go there, should I go here, should I go there. By the time action begins, the school year's half over. It's too late. So these are concerns, the real concerns. So in there's just enough data approach, it's not saying that those data points aren't relevant or valuable, just saying we don't necessarily need all of them right now to be able to begin moving. So this school used the summative data as a starting point, but quickly narrows the inquiry. How can we improve students' math, reasoning, and explanation skills in problem-solving tasks? Maybe that's something that they pulled out of the assessment data, looked at it, said, okay, this is a concern for us. Let's focus specifically on this thing and what we can do, because this is important. Maybe it's a key factor of what they should be learning right now. So they have 3 teachers begin a 3-week pilot where students do a math talk exit slip twice a week. They just talk about math as they're leaving, and they do some of that work. Teachers collect 2 sample data points. Did the student use reasoning vocabulary? Didn't the student explain their answer? 2 really relevant things to think about as you go through. So with that, then they actually get some data. The weekly reflection shows which strategies improved responses. So if they're doing these types of things, How are they actually getting better? Teachers notice students gain confidence in verbalizing math thinking, if that's what you want to do. The team refines strategy and scales it to more classrooms. New assessments, sentence stems, and journals are co-developed, guided by quick formative data instead of exhaustive diagnostics. This is just enough data, just enough to kind of make forward. And again, I like data, but we have to be careful with how much we're doing. So here's some key differences. I don't need to read all these to you, but just kind of see what happens and why we do it this way. Much more nimble, much more targeted approach when we're doing it through the improvement science. Okay, that's important. So this is the last shift. And if you were here, we would talk more, spend more time, talk about these things, but because we're just talking, I'm recording it for you, and I'm happy to answer questions you have about it. So one of the things that the traditional needs assessments do not tend to do is they tend not to focus on some of these ideas of student differences. So it's not equitable. Instead, you're just going to doing it for everybody, and it does not get at those specific needs that some students may actually have. Middle school notices that fewer than 25% students are enrolled in advanced math classes by 8th grade. Well, got to fix that. They conduct a general analysis of the numbers and test scores. They create a universal math readiness summer camp where all kids should come to the math readiness summer camp, and all students can apply with the selections based on a single math benchmark score. Again, not bad, but are we missing things? Okay, there's no disaggregation of data. Are my foster kids struggling more? Are my homeless kids? Are my Hispanic, my African American? What does that actually do? Maybe it's my SPED kids, and I actually need to do something different for them. It doesn't look at the structural barriers or students' perspectives. What do you think about why you're not doing it? Why are you not going to math classes? Those questions that they have. Assumes a neutral process will yield equitable outcomes. Just because I give it to everybody doesn't mean it's going to make a difference in some specific populations. Here's a way to do it if we were to go through the Plan, Do, Study Act within improvement science. The school team begins by disaggregating enrollment and performance data. Only 10% of Latino students and 5% of English learners are in advanced math. Okay, well, that's a problem. Let's go and talk to them. They conduct empathy interviews with unrepresented students and families. Hey, what's going on? I noticed that you haven't taken this class. Is it too hard? You're not interested, not planning to go into college? What is it you're going to do? That's the start of an empathy interview that you might have. What they find out is that a lot of students were never informed about the placement opportunities. If you don't know, you can't go. Language barriers and a lack of school counselors with limited access. So they just don't have enough counselors to get these kids in it because they don't have it, and they don't have the language skills. They don't speak English very well. They didn't even know that they had access to it. Some teachers held implicit bias that students were not quite math ready. We're going to pick only those ones they believe are math ready because they maybe don't speak English, and so we need to know. This is a concern. This allows us to be able to address some of those things. Student test a pilot opt-in math placement program with targeted outreach to families of unrepresented kids, translated materials, and new and teacher-nominated reviews. Okay, so very different approach. Reaching out to kids, giving some different content and translated materials, and really this teacher-nominated review that they're actually doing. Enrollment of Latino and EL students in advanced math raises 40% in the pilot. Teachers report deeper reflection on how they make placement decisions. Why am I picking these kids? Why are they part of this? Helps us think. The new, more inclusive placement process becomes policy. Staff receive training in equity-conscious decision-making and student voice along those lines. So just a very, again, kind of traditional thing that you're looking at, aggregated data, assumes access is equal, focuses on performance plans for all students, decisions made without affected voices. Those are all problematic in a lot of ways. So we want to disaggregate, we want to look at barriers, we're really going to look at the opportunity and inclusion. And they're going to really focus in where inequities are happening. And they actually are going to look at some of our marginalized students. So here's the summary at the end of this right now. Like I said, this is a little fast, but it is what it is. Traditional needs assessments, we do a one-time assessment. We do a lot of data heavy and it's static, just kind of during time. There's an external diagnosis, meaning someone outside this process is giving you, saying you need to do this. Focus on symptoms. We're going to address your time with this. It's not necessarily associated with the implementation, and you may miss some of the equity gaps. If we use improvement science, we're much more likely to do some continuous learning as we go along to adapt and adjust what we're doing. There's just enough data to be able to get it going on. We're going to get the local context in some of those voices. We're going to look at systems rather than symptoms. We're going to look, this whole idea is going to be embedded in improvement, and it's going to be equity centered. Much better process. I encourage you to read what you're looking at, what you're thinking about with your teams and the rest, to be able to see how improvement science might be able to happen within that. And then you can see some of these ideas. So that's what I have. I raised my hand again. I hope everyone's doing well, and I will see you the next week.